Hello, this is News Review. My name is Lamin Jai and I'm with Fatou Kamara. Coming up on the show, anger over Yankuba Toure's refusal to testify before the TRRC. We'll bring you that report. Also coming up, Gambia National Broadband Project launched to enhance internet services in the Gambia. But first, Fatou, let me start with the papers, I think.
Yes, thank you very much, Lamin. We will be here to talk to us about the situation that happened today at the TRRC. I've seen that social media is inundated. Everybody is on social media is talking about this, whether it's on Twitter or on Facebook or elsewhere. So we will be talking to a lawyer here, and we also will be analyzing the situation with some Gambians in the diaspora, and also Kex will join us. So we will have a long evening today. So you start with the newspapers.
So you brace up there for this long session we're going to have. So I'll begin with the papers, starting with the Standard newspaper. The Standard lead story today is saying that Girl 23 accused Jammeh of rape. 1.8 billion project, that's a $1.8 billion project to address sanitation, sustainable water supply. M. Sumare says Barrow needs truthful advisors. I lost both kidneys to torture. That's one of the witnesses there at the TRRC Dembadem. Nawek boss sacked, deputy board chairman resigns in protest. So I'll quickly go through some of the stories. Fatou Jallow, commonly called Tufa, a Gambian girl who won a July 22nd beauty pageant organized by former President Yahya Jammeh, has accused the former president of raping her. Ms. Jallow, who has fled to Canada where she won asylum in 2015, made this claim in an interview with the New York Times published yesterday. She said after the pageant, Yahya Jammeh soon began summoning her to State House and eventually asked her to marry him. She said no. I thought it was a joke, Ms. Jallow said. I was very naive. I didn't know how brutal he was. According to her, when Jammeh summoned her yet again for what she thought was a Ramadan event, he raped her. The other story the Standard is the reporting on today is $1.8 billion project to address sanitation, sustainable water supply. The Vice President, Dr. Aissatou Toure, yesterday presided over the launch of $1.884 billion project to support the provision of sustainable access to safe water and basic sanitation in the rural and peri-urban regions of the Gambia. The Climate Smart Rural Water Supply and Development Project, a multi-donor funded project principally financed by the African Development Bank Group, will be implemented in 140 rural and 4 peri-urban communities across the 5 regions of the country. M. Sumare says Barrow needs truthful advisors. Mohamed Sumare, a prominent businessman famous for his declaration that he would run for president in 2001, has said for President Barrow to do his work properly, he needs a strong and truthful team of advisors. Speaking to the Standard, Sumare warned Barrow that the downfall of every president is as a result of bad advisors. He said many things that happened under Jammeh are being repeated now, such as uncontrollable government expenditure. Naik Boss sacked, Deputy Board Chairman resigns in protest. Baba Farajo, the Managing Director of the National Utilities Company, NAWEC, has been sacked from June 28. Official sources told the Standard. Our source further said Mr. Farajo has been replaced by one Alpha Robinson. However, a statement from the State House yesterday said Mr. Farajo has been appointed into the Foreign Service as a diplomat. But this was refuted by sources close to Mr. Farajo, who told the Standard that the former MD's termination letter did not say he was going to the Foreign Services. That will be all on the Standard. I will now turn to the Point newspaper. The Point also is reporting on the NAWEC incident or development there. NAWEC saga, board vice chairman resigns as MD Farajo removed. Former Gambian beauty queen accuses Jammeh of rape. GAF soldier shot at Kanilai. TRRC, former driver Yankuba Toure testifies. So let's look at that army story there. The GAV Lance Corporal Samba Bah, a member of the Gambia National Armed Forces or Gambia Armed Forces, who was on posting at the 4th Infantry Battalion at Kanilai, the home village of former President Yahya Jammeh, was accidentally shot on Monday by his colleague. The Point has been informed. So that will be all on the papers. Fatou,
Well, thank you very much, Lamin, and we would like to thank all our viewers right now. We apologize you couldn't make it early today. The plan was to come on time and talk about the drama that unfolded today at the TRRC. I'm sure everybody was glued to their TV or glued to their online TV or phones trying to make sense of what was happening. I was on Twitter putting all the information out there that's saying, okay, Yankuba is coming, let's see what's going to happen now if he's going to say yes. At some point, do you think he was going to do it?
I had always been doubtful when it comes to Yankuba. Here's a guy who, you know, brought himself some problems with regard to this commission. There was a witness who appeared before this commission and said Yankuba was someone who called him and told him that he should not mind the commission.
Oh yes, that happened,
so
and
that
then he was taken to court, and that case was dropped.
And then that case was
yes.
dropped.
Yes.
But I think let's go
what we would do, we actually have an exclusive report that would run for about 10 minutes, I think, but it actually covered both the TRRC and also the protest at the police station. So we're going to bring you that before we go into the discussion proper. Like I said, we will be talking to a lawyer online on the phone who will be telling us his take. But we will start with the report. Yankuba Toure, one of the architects of the July 1994 military takeover on Wednesday, appeared before the TRRC sittings in Kololi, but caused a drama when he stubbornly refused to testify to the commission. He has been implicated in extrajudicial killings and other violations of the human rights of the Gambia. Following his refusal to cooperate with the commission, he was arrested and taken to Karaba police station, where a large protesting crowd gathered. We have this report. Like I said, it's long, but it's very interesting.
The mob thronged the police station early Wednesday after Mr. Toure was brought in following his refusal to cooperate with the TRRC. Yankuba Toure was today brought before the TRRC but refused to publicly testify, arguing that he had been indemnified by the Constitution. Ugly scenes ensued and he was arrested and escorted to Karawa police station. But a large crowd of angry mob converged on the station, expressing their disgust at Mr. Toure's actions.
Yankuba dafa yabaate bi passé yabaate bi amul dara lu moo def nga ni fi nit yi nekkee suñ ko bàyyee mu génn si fii du baax de nit yaa ngi mer waa xam naa ne bii dafa yaba moom respect gu TRRC respect gu Gambian si respect gu kenn lii passé na lii mooy lan waxal nga ne doo waxal li ji dégga from you li nga am pour wax fu sana waxee unoo wax dëgga yow doo wax dëgga lii passé na yabaate anyway ñu ngi fii di ko xaar daal
doesn't deserve respect from we the Gambian because they're murderer and we don't need him anymore in the system. We don't need people like Yankuba Toure in our system. Never again. Never again. Never again. We will take everything according to law, but if anybody disrespect, we have to show him.
We don't like you.
Yes, we have to show him. We have to show him.
Somebody big. I'm big. We are all ordinary Gambians. My friend.
You have to disrespect him because everybody disrespect. He disrespect the whole Gambia. I mean, yeah, they have to handcuff him. They have to throw him inside the truck.
And it's a murderer.
Because he's a murderer. He doesn't deserve respect anymore.
He deserve no respect.
Yankuba Toure na génn si doomi aadama yi fii ñëpp dañ mer Yankuba Toure fa rey ay doomi aadama ñim rey ay nit lañ ay jullit lañ comme moom understand nga lu ñoo ñaan luwaa bi mooy na def luwaayam na def mbiram loolu la ñoo ñaan fu mu nekk ñun ñëpp a mer man maa ngi nii dama doon jaay ma teg suma bitig bi ñëw fii na Yankuba Toure génn nam génn loolu la ñoo wax.
You understand? We will never allow the government to let Yankuba to walk free again. This guy has to go to jail for killing innocent Gambians and for refusing to talk to the TRC. Who the hell is Yankuba? Who the hell is he? We will not compromise with this situation. Let it be clear to the government that we are not going to relent in what we are doing. We will make sure that things like that will never repeat in this country because we have all suffered so much. We have all suffered so much, and for a small boy like Yankuba to walk to the TRRC and refuse to testify is just rudeness. If we have immunity, we are strapping up the immunity today.
Rusam jogul Gambia it's a foreigner ngeen wax du xew o daka ñi ñoy rey ñom Ousseynou Ndiaye ñi ñoy rey doomi
li lañ ko def
Uncle Ousseynou Ndiaye mo tax ndaw football dafa dem
may reyante koku mo tax may reyante suma oncle suma everything la koku mo tax may reyante ki su gene wuram mi dama ko wol kani billahi na gene
Yankuba Touré ay Gambia bele neng ko ya moyle Yankuba Touré Gambia bele Yankuba Touré make Gambia noti ñi banko kan Edward Singate make banko dingoti ya jame make banko dingoti wala na kamani in power yakuno tala nyote ma rek isida isida kamul fa rek ka Gambia no fa ko ya moyle half and half Gambia wala ka nyamba nya be ke Gambia Gambia dim foro wona bi kam fa ñi banko kan half and half Gambia ya jame Edward Singate sana sabali bi mbeto la bata kono mbeto la bata Adama Barrow ay samba joya nyati wala
that when this man appear here there's going to be total blindness in the Gambia because people were called for like TRRC like that Kanye the killer and he was like that man told him Yankuba Touré told him not to answer which is criminal act to the law. When the law call you go and defend yourself. Law calling you that doesn't mean that you are guilty. You are guilty. You can be innocent. The law call you go and defend yourself. You cannot defend yourself to the nation. You insult the whole country, the whole Gambia. Every patriotic Gambian has to be it's like you insult everybody. So this man doesn't deserve life. He has to come out. We put fuel on him. We burn him to ashes.
Touré was subsequently escorted to anti-crime headquarters in Bijilo, but not without trouble. Earlier on Wednesday, the subpoenaing of Yankuba Touré by the TRRC turned chaotic when the former AFPRC junta leader stormed out of the hearing room of the investigation. Drama started as early as 10 a.m. when Mr. Touré first reported to the commission engaging in a long back and forth with TRRC officials. During this standoff, Touré made it clear he was not comfortable testifying publicly. At about 11:30 a.m., Touré finally came out of the witness room and took his seat in the hearing room. But once asked by the TRRC counsel Esa Fall to stand up to swear to the Quran, Touré refused. Touré then sat and said, "Mr. Chairman, I think we have a problem. I am leaving." The chairman of the commission read a statement shortly after Touré stormed out.
The Reparation Summer Commission has issued multiple subpoenas to Mr. Yankuba Touré to appear before the Commission to testify as a person adversely mentioned for his involvement in human rights violations between 1994 and 1996. All those subpoenas were postponed, and the last time a subpoena was issued on the 24th day of June 2019 for his appearance and testimony before the Commission today, the 26th day of June. During a meeting this morning between Mr. Touré, the chairman, and the Commission summer staff members, Mr. Touré indicated his refusal to honor the subpoena. He is presently within the premises of the TRRC, but as just have been seen, he has clearly refused to appear and testify before the Commission pursuant to the subpoena.
TRRC counsel Esa Fall intervened once the chairman of the commission finished reading a prepared statement asking the investigation to give Yankuba Touré another chance to testify.
Mr. Chair, may I ask that Mr. Touré be given another chance and be asked by the commission staff to come and appear before the commission and be sworn in and testify. If he refuses a second time, you adjourn the proceedings
Toure later emerged, but only after another back and forth with Fall in the witness room.
You refuse to come and appear, that would attract consequences. The chairman has already made a pronouncement on that. This is a second chance you are being given to come and formally appear before the commission. If you refuse, we leave it at that.
At the hearing room, Toure was again asked to swear by the Quran, which he did. 5 minutes into his testimony, Toure again showed his stubborn side.
When I came, I was posted at Kudang military camp as the camp commandant.
Proceed, please.
And later posted to Farafenye between 1993 and 1994.
During this period, can you tell us what were the problems within the Gambia National Army?
I am not going to testify regarding that, please. I invoke my constitutional immunity on all those issues.
Mr. Toure, I warn you that this is not the place to raise the issue of immunity. If you want to raise immunity claim, you take it to the High Court. Let me just finish. This is a truth commission. It's not a civil or criminal proceeding. It is, in fact, not a legal proceeding. So the claimed immunity does not apply to a fact-finding mission by the Commission of Inquiry.
Council, I still stand by my position that I invoke the constitutional immunity. The Constitution is the supreme law of this country. Any proceeding that is against the 1997 Constitution, I am not going to testify, and I will not answer any questions.
Yankuba Toure was a one-time national mobilizer of the APRC party. He also served as Minister of Lands in the past dispensation. His name has been variously linked to instances of gross human rights abuse against citizens. Prominent among atrocities attributed to him are the gruesome killing of a former Gambian finance minister and the 1996 brutal torture of UDP supporters.
Well, what a day today it was at the TRRC for Council Issa Fall and also for the chairman, Mr. Cisse. Is it Dr. Cisse?
Lamin J. Cisse.
Lamin J. Cisse. Dr. Lamin J. Cisse. Well, actually, we will call a lawyer that we will be talking to about this whole situation today at the TRRC. And then later on, we will discuss it right here amongst ourselves. And we also have people waiting on the phone to join us on Skype. And if you also want to call in, please stand by Skype. Our Skype name is Fatu Radio Live. Add us so you can talk because we want to hear from all of you. And one thing I want to say before we call the lawyer, many a times people would say that, you know, Barrow is going to be a dictator. Gambia is going to be a dictatorship. I always tell you that is never going to happen in Gambia today. Looking at what happened at the police station, the protesters going out saying, you know, we want this case to be taken care of. We are tired. So no Gambian is going to allow dictatorship again. Doesn't it look like it?
Well, it has every indication of that. Gambians nowadays are quite brave.
Yes.
They want to be seen to be taking part in the democracy process. So what happened today is a clear manifestation of that. You know, there's a lot of people, Gambians, came out to, you know, express their anger, their disgust at what transpired or happened at the TRRC today.
And we're just going to say, like the consul said at the press conference after today, that it does not give anybody the right to go and attack anybody or throw stones. We just want to put that out there, that they should let the rule of law take its course, right? Yes. So we have the lawyer Lamin Kemboch on the line. He's going to talk to us to try to make sense of all of this issue because it's a very technical issue. I was reading all the time trying to make a reference to the Constitution, the section that Yankuba was referring to. Hello, good evening, lawyer Lamin Kemboch.
Yeah, good evening. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. This is Fatu Kamara, and I'm right here with Lamin Jai and also with Kex on the platform right here. So we want to talk to you about the situation at the TRRC today. We have seen that Yankuba was quoting part of the Constitution that gave them immunity, him and other members of the council. Do you think this is enough to justify him not testifying at the TRRC today?
Thank you very much for the honor and the trust and profit first of all, and I just want to say that the constitutional immunity that he is relying on does not extend to criminal liability. It's only limited to acts and omissions done in the execution of their duties as members of the government. But it's not extended to any criminal liability.
But did he say that clearly? Did he say clearly that it's not extended to any criminal liability on there, or that was yes?
He did not mention that, but if he is relying on the immunity that he is citing under the Constitution, that does not avail him even the right to disrespect the TRRC.
Okay.
Because the attitude that people have seen today is awesome, it's disrespectful, and it's not only to the TRRC, but the entire country and the world at large. So this commission is being watched by the whole world.
Yes, but the part of that where he was relying on, that's the part that talks about the legal proceedings, and it said that no member of the Gambia Armed Forces Provisional Ruling Council, any person appointed minister by the Armed Forces Provisional Ruling Council for other appointees of the Armed Forces Provisional Ruling Council shall be held liable or answerable before a court or authority under this constitution or any other law, either jointly or severally for an act or omission in the performance of his or her official duty.
Yes, this is not the first time that we are seeing former officers of government relying on constitutional immunity. But like I said earlier, their liability is limited. It's not unlimited. It does not cover acts that are criminal in nature. That falls outside the scope of his immunity. Immunities are limited to acts and omissions done in the execution of their duties. And as such, if it were an act or omission done in the execution of his duties, then yes, the immunity will avail him. But if it extends to other acts which fall outside the scope of his official duties, such as the allegations which have been leveled against him in the commission, I don't think that the immunity avails him.
So don't you think that Yankuba, do you think he read this whole thing wrong? Because I heard he has lawyers who were advising him. And do you think he would risk this if he's not sure that this is something that he can get away with?
Yeah, we are all entitled to our opinion, and we are all entitled to interpret the Constitution the way that it suits us. But if we are to make a meaningful interpretation of the wordings of that constitutional immunity, then it says that they shall not be liable. The liability there did not expressly say criminal liability. It only says liability, and that liability, my understanding and the interpretation of that in other judicial cases is that it is only limited to civil liability and not criminal liability. So it does not avail him. I don't know whether he is acting on his own opinion or he is acting on the advice of others. But if it is legal advice, I beg to differ and disagree with that advice.
Now that he is arrested, what do you think is going to happen next? Because I heard at the TRRC, they were saying today that what is going to happen depends on the Attorney General Chambers. They're the ones who are going to decide. The TRRC would say, okay, we were trying to get him to testify. He said, no, we ordered for his arrest, and now it's up to you. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, the TRRC Act has made provision for offences under the Act. That is the TRRC Act. And if you look at the section 37, it specifically deals with offences that are committed in relation to the duties and functions and responsibilities of the Commission.
Yes.
And there is a high degree of probability that he may face charges. And if he is charged under the Commission and found liable, certainly he will pay the penalty that is prescribed under the Act.
And do we know what that is right now?
Well, the penalty, if you are found liable, is a fine of $1 million and or 3 years imprisonment.
Well, some quoted Yankuba as saying when he was taken away by the paramilitary that he was saying, "Oh, nothing's going to happen. I'm just going to be arrested and I'll be bailed and I'll go home." Do you think something like that will happen? Because the Constitution also says you cannot keep someone from... Yeah,
certainly, no matter how lenient the authorities may be, this is a very serious crisis and it's a very sensitive matter because it touches on the integrity of the country and not only Gambians in the Gambia but in the diaspora as well. And there are so many stakeholders who are interested in the results and findings of the TRRC. So certainly I am of the view that he will not get scot-free with such an attitude of absolute disrespect for the members of the commission. Something certainly will come out of it.
We saw Chairman Cisse said that he read out the orders and said, okay, we're going to get him arrested. And then later Consul Fall came back and said to him, can we give him another chance? Most people said the Consul Fall should not have done that. Now that the chairman has spoken, he could have just let it go. But others are saying it is good that he gave him a second chance. What's your take on that?
Well, I think the law should take its course. That is why the lawmakers in their wisdom have prepared penalties for anybody who violates any act or provision in the TRRC Act. So giving him a second chance, to be honest, is like undermining the functions, the powers and the authority of the commission. So I don't think that it's fair to him and to other members of the commission and the country at large. Anyone who is not willing to cooperate or to testify or refuse to give evidence before the commission should be dealt with according to the law.
My colleague Lamin is here and he has a question for you. Just hold on, please.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Lawyer Barrister there. So I just want to ask you, because the Justice Minister, Abubakar Tambedu, has been quoted as saying that Mr. Toure is going to be prosecuted vehemently, that what he did is unacceptable. But we have seen here is a man who was previously tried by the state, but the state ended up bungling that case. So now that the Justice Minister is coming out and saying, do you think that the prosecution or the Minister of Justice will be able to nail Yankuba Toure down this time?
Yeah, certainly I believe the minister who is empowered to make rules and regulations to ensure the smooth running of the commission will certainly keep to his words and not only prosecuted, but I think the law should be allowed to take its course this time so that it will not be repeated by others who are waiting to appear before the commission.
But again, also, let me ask you this, because when you talk about interference, contempt, we know that, I mean, this is what the TRRC is relying on, this issue of contempt. But those people who came out today to protest, to say that Yankuba Toure must appear before the commission and testify, don't you think, as a lawyer, don't you think that is also interference?
Yeah, certainly, even though the general public has a right to demonstrate and to peacefully, but such demonstrations are limited. The powers to demonstrate peacefully is limited in the sense that it must not interfere with national security, the peace and stability of the country. Because if others emulate it and also come out and want to demonstrate that he should be prosecuted, I think there is going to be a national issue and a national security issue. So that demonstration, with due respect to those who are exercising it, doing so, but I don't think it is in the interest of our national security.
So one more question, one final question. Yankuba Toure, what would you advise him as a lawyer?
Although I am not instructed, but being a question that is for the benefit of the general public, I think he should come out willingly and testify voluntarily and assist not only the commission, But this commission is set up to heal the wounds that has been on the scar, on the mind and the hearts of so many Gambians for so many years. And now that the time has come to heal those wounds, it appears as if his refusal to testify before the commission is like he's creating some more deep wounds that will be difficult to heal. So I think coming out freely and voluntarily giving evidence before the commission is far more beneficial to him than refusal to give evidence before the commission.
Barrister Mboj, thank you very much.
I may have one more. Barrister, before you go, I saw on social media, like I said, this is a very technical issue. It's something I know all of a sudden everybody is a lawyer on social media, but you are the expert here, and I want to ask you this question. Most people said because Yankuba was subpoenaed, they said that means that he should not be there answering all the questions, that he can choose to answer what he wants. Is that what it is when one is subpoenaed?
No. I beg to differ with that because the commission has all the powers of a court, and because it is an act of parliament, and it has created penalties, it has created offences, and refusal to answer a question before a commission itself is an offence, and it's punishable under the act. So he has no choice to refuse to give evidence. And even if he gives evidence and misleads the commission, that's another offense in itself. So the proper thing for him to do is to answer all questions to the best of his knowledge and ability without misleading the commission. Otherwise, he will put himself in another jeopardy.
And on Twitter, I just want to take one more from Twitter, and then that will be it. A lawyer colleague of yours, there's a lawyer who said on Twitter that the actions of Yankuba Toure has brought the administration of the TRRC into serious disrepute. And he added that there must be consequences. Do you believe that this has brought the administration of the TRRC into serious disrepute?
Yeah. Seriously, I agree with that. This is absolute disrespect. I will call it absolute disrespect for undermining the authority and the powers of the commission. And unless something is done, it will definitely hamper the efforts of the TRRC and the government at reconciliation.
So now that they're taking a break for till the 8th, maybe they'll try to sort something out. It's a very unfortunate situation today. I mean, I think he was very disrespectful to the chairman and also the members, the commissioners, the lead counsel, and all of them. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that because being a commission that is set up by an act of the National Assembly and by the executive and for a purpose, and that mandate is aimed at national reconciliation. So the way he appeared, his demeanor before the commission, I think will attract a charge of contempt of the commission.
Well, thank you very much. Is there any last word that you want to leave with our viewers? We have about 1.8K people watching.
Yes, I believe that Gambians should be patient. I heard of the demonstration and the use of force and the police using tear gas, but all that is not necessary. The aim of the TRRC is aimed at national reconciliation. That is trying to heal the wounds that have been created under the past regime. So I will advise all Gambians to be law-abiding, obey the rule of law, and obey the orders and mandate of the TRRC, cooperate fully with its functions to enable it to achieve its purpose.
And one more thing before you go. I saw a lot of people talking on Facebook that the government of President Adama Barrow should have looked into this constitution, the part that the legal proceedings part that Yankuba is talking about. But they said all that they were interested in is amending the age limit to make sure that they have the vice president. Do you think that it is the fault of the government for not doing anything about that part? It's an entrenched clause, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the Constitution has made provision for amendment. That one is normal in any democratic situation. If you have a clause in the constitution which becomes an obstacle or a barrier towards national development, the government through the national have all the power to amend it or to delete it or insert additional provisions just to make sure that the government is able to achieve its purpose.
But it looks like the age limit was all they were interested in.
Yeah, that's right. And that is also for a purpose, and it's intended to enable some people to be able to sit as public officers in the government or executive officers. I think it is necessary for the smooth administration of the functions of the government.
Well, thank you very much, Lawyer Lamin Kemboj, for your time. We do appreciate it. Thank you very much for answering to our call on short notice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, and Lamin, it was like the age limit is the interest at that time. Very unfortunate. I think this KEX, the National Assembly expert, it's an entrenched clause, right? That's the one that before you change it, there has to be a referendum.
Yeah, Fatu, the whole issue of this constitution itself, these very people who are now, governing the country that we have, Gambia here, are the very people who, when they were in the opposition, claiming that we have a bad constitution, up to an extent that others were even calling it a soldier constitution. That shows you that how bad the constitution was. And I thought we have seen so many things that are not in line with human rights activities that are violation of people's rights. They are embedded in the constitution. And I could remember when the bill of this Truth and Reconciliation, the CRC bill came to the National Assembly for them to draft a new constitution or amend the 1997 constitution. There was a debate between the National Assembly members, and they made it very clear that not the whole of 1997 constitution is bad. It's just few sections in the constitution that are bad. Why can't we amend those constitutions that are entrenched clause? We gather them together, we have one folder. The ones that can be amended by the National Assembly, we put them together and we amend it as National Assembly members. So anything that is an entrenched clause has to go with a referendum. Then we call for one referendum.
Yes. Yes, who is that, please? Hello.
Hello, yeah.
Yes, Kanla, Jumalem.
Lamin Tamba.
Yes, Lamin, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
No problems at all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we just want your take on this. You heard from the expert. We had lawyer Kemboj. So now what is your take? Because I've been I saw you were busy, very busy on Facebook today.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I mean, the Yankuba Toure saga is basically, I think people believe the guy just TRRT and was belligerent. I think that the guy might have had some legal advice, and that legal advice, unfortunately for the viewing public, unfortunately for Yankuba Toure, he acted in accordance with that legal advice, and he's within his right to do so, because people are confusing two things here. He did say he should not be subject to any court proceedings or answerable to any court or authority. Two words very important: subject to any court or answerable to any court or proceedings. So answerable is exactly what happened today. We need to look at that word in the Constitution, and that is an entrenched clause.
But Lamin, the lead counsel did say at the press conference that he had shortly after Yankuba refused to testify, he did say that when it comes to most of the crimes that they're testifying on has to do with crimes against humanity. And he did mention that with crimes against humanity, there is no immunity.
Well, I mean, I've seen immunities for crimes against humanity. And the lead counsel said that so many immunities across the world, just the Gambia, even the developed world, has got immunities for their presidents. So for the lead counsel to say there's no immunity for crimes against humanity, I don't know what the lead counsel bases his argument on. As far as I'm concerned, the Constitution of the Gambia gives Yankuba Toure and the council members immunity, and that immunity applies. So,
Mr. Tamba, can I ask you?
is not legal. Yes.
Yes, I just want to ask you, because the chairman of the commission did indicate or did say that him appearing before the commission to testify does not necessarily or directly violate this immunity that he is talking about. Do you agree with the commission?
I agree with the commission. Answering questions 100% accurate, but then again, answering question, the Constitution just says.
Lamin, I think we're having a problem with your connection.
It should not be our commission.
I think we're having a problem with your connection. It's not very good. So why don't you hang up and maybe call us again? But Kex is going to come and talk to us about his take on this. But Coach Pasamba Jau posted on Facebook now that what transpired today, the TRRC has its positives. He said every democracy, including the USA, had to deal with such contradictions. This is where our Supreme Court will have the opportunity to give us constitutional and legal interpretation of the clause. Yes, Kex, you were talking, and we'll let you continue.
Yeah, I was the failure of the government to amend this bad laws. That's why I am, if not, we will not be in the scenario where we are. Because we all know that the 1997 Constitution was amended to suit an individual, not to suit the Gambian sovereign citizens. And we have seen so many changes that give the presidents and its executives the power. And knowing that that is in your Constitution, I think the first step that the government should have done is to amend those bad laws. Let them not rely on that. But we have seen the same government who are saying that, still now there are laws in this country that they will make sure that they utilize it. So that shows you that these bad laws are in our Constitution, and they could have amended this rather than waiting for the Constitutional Review Commission that will last for 3 years. We could have a new constitution within 1 or 6 months of this constitution, because I could remember during the adjournment debate when the bill was tabled, Sana Jawara of Upper Fuladu was part of those who said that they could have a new constitution even without going the procedure that the government wants, establishing the truth at TRRC and the CRRC Commission, and so many things. But we could have amended all those sections by bringing the ones that are entering clause and the ones that are not on entering clause, and we go in for one referendum and we have a very good constitution. Then, if we have this TRRC, we will not fall into the scenario where we are today. But said and done, I think we will learn from our mistake and move on. But for the Yankuba Toure saga, I feel like he didn't understand what is the main purpose of the TRRC here. The main purpose of TRRC is to reconcile the nation. And Yankuba coming voluntarily and advice might give him, maybe if he has to face a punishment that will be more serious, because of the TRRC of reconciling the nation, they could have tempered justice with mercy. But now he have complicated the whole scenario here, even if it is a constitutional requirement. But if he had come and testify voluntarily, the commission could have said that, come on, he have at least answered our call with respect, and he come and testify before the TRRC. But now pushing the commissioner to a level of, we have to go to the Supreme Court or to the Ministry of Justice is another process that the TRRC might feel like they are being disrespected, and so many things. It might complicate the whole matter. But for the part of the Constitution, I don't want to go further in it, because the Supreme Court is the only legal authority that has to interpret the Constitution. And for me, a layman, I don't want to sit on this platform and I say that yes, Yankuba has done it. It's a very technical issue.
But Madi Jobate has just posted something before Lamin comes in, and Madi said, very sadly, the Constitution indeed protects Yankuba Toure and the AFPRC criminals. He said, therefore, arresting him is unconstitutional. That's what Madi is saying. He's saying, however, it is in his interest to cooperate with the TRRC, as Sana Sabali did. Refusing to do so harms him more in the future. What then should TRRC do? That's what Madi is saying. He's saying arresting Yankuba Toure is very unconstitutional.
So I think I agree with what Madi is saying, Fatu. But then what we also have to understand is that this is what happens when you put the cart before the horse, because the Constitution needs fixing. We didn't fix that, and here we are, witnesses relying on this same Constitution, and it is the supreme law of the land. Anything that runs counter to this Constitution will be null and void. So Yankuba Toure coming out today, like you said, I'm sure he must have listened to what lawyers would have advised him, and he came there.
Because I think the Constitution is about the interpretation, right? Because it didn't say that exactly at what time can they you know,
yeah, he's talking about when they are
Yeah.
exercising their duties. But
Yes.
now the Constitution didn't go further to explain to us where did the duties of these people start and where the duties of them ends. If you look at the killing of Koro one house, they were saying that that was done after the war. It starts from 4 o'clock. So whether the duties has covered from that period, you know, something
because
that
it says official duties.
so it said during their duties. So we need an interpretation.
Yeah.
Where did the Constitution say that this is where the duties start and this is where the duties
It could
end?
be overtime. So if it is overtime,
we need a constitutional expert. That's why I don't want to go deep inside that and let us with the Supreme Court to tell us all these things because it's covered during their execution of their duties.
What I would add that I think the TRRC could have done better when it comes
like
to
how?
When it comes to Yankuba Toure. Here is a guy who has been subpoenaed several times.
Yes.
But all these subpoenas were postponed.
Yeah, but the chairman said he did not come because he wasn't asked to come or something. Like
yes,
they were still working on it.
But you also have to put everything into context here. The issue of Yankuba Toure being dragged to court for allegedly interfering with the work of the commission. So that should, I mean, tell you something is not well here, and you should have handled this better.
But they checked that and saw that I think Kanye was the one calling Yankuba instead, reaching out to Yankuba and FJC. This is what I heard according to court records.
Yes, but being that as it may, I also think that the TRRC should have expected something like this and they should have been prepared. But this seriously misfired. Someone in this guy, he comes to the commission and tells you, I'm not going to testify. It puts the commission into a very weak light.
Yeah. But that's what I'm trying to think right here. Like, what happened? What did they tell him that made him go to the commission this morning? Because did they tell him that, Yankuba, you're coming over to testify? Or they told him, Yankuba, you're coming over for a meeting? Because, like, if you go there, you know you're supposed to testify. So you are in there and you're saying, I'm not testifying. Do you guys know what I'm saying?
That's exactly.
I don't know what he must have been told.
Yeah, actually, Yankuba, I think he was informed that he has to appear before the TRRC
to testify. Because he did say that I will appear, but I will not answer questions. I will not talk.
So that's what he said. I think he have been informed. But for me, there are so many things that could have been done. Even if you read the TRRC Act, it doesn't say that like people that where Yankuba is definitely relying on to say that immunity. It has to talk about the act itself should have talked about, yes, the immunity, there's an immunity in the Constitution, but the immunity doesn't cover, it doesn't reflect in an TRRC Act. It's only appear like what the commissioner said, Fall had said, during that, the act could have covered that and said that immunity covers when you are before a court of law or any other thing, but this TRRC, the main purpose is for truth and reconciliation. So in this place, the immunity doesn't reflect here, and people would have understand because I checked the act itself, but it doesn't talk about people that are covered with the immunity, and they could have told that because he said that, I heard from Fall that saying that, the immunity doesn't reflect in the TRRC. It's when you are before a court of law. And this could have been very clear in the act and people would have understand that. So,
but I also think the law that Toure is relying on didn't only talk about a court of law, but it also went on to talk about tribunals.
Yes, tribunals. Even commissions and other things.
This is quite problematic. This is quite problematic. But I also think he should not have done what he did.
No, he should not have.
Definitely, I think he was disrespectful to them, and you could see that Council Fall actually did well. He walked all the way to the witness room to talk to him.
And then I felt sorry for Council Fall. Council Fall should have left it at where the chairman said, okay, I am ordering for his arrest because he's not cooperating. He was pushing. But Council Fall still came and insisted that the chairman should allow him to give him another chance. And that put the commission into a very funny light.
The chairman said that to him. The chairman told him, I don't want this to be a mockery of the whole situation, and it ended up being that.
It ended up being that.
So one has to understand.
We
have to understand the TRRC here. What is the purpose? The TRRC is for the truth and reconciliation.
And also to reconcile.
To reconcile the nation. So that's why Fall used that. They want to be hard. They want to use all avenues that are available to see how best whether the victim
or his chairman spoke. I think that should have
witness could have complied, but he have tried to give him the chance whether he could have changed his mind, and he fails to do that, and that shows you that how the TRRC itself want to reconcile the nation, wants people to come voluntarily and give their statement so that we will not go into a scenario whereby we have to use the courts and the other things and waste the state resources.
I think we have Banka on the line. Banka's on the line. We were going to talk to him and then later, but somebody who's watching us too in the US, he said, Nko, Allah interpretation of the Constitution dal for Jakalo. There's one Badibunka saying that I told Badibunka will be told the Jante, but more for men. Hello, is that Banka on the phone?
No, Suleiman Jeng.
Suleiman, how are you? From Birmingham?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Yeah, so what is your take on this whole issue today that happened at the TRRC?
Yeah, I think the whole issue has opened, a Pandora box for the elected house, because like Mr. Ture, Lawyer Ture stated, when the elected house sat, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, when they sat, they prioritize, only the age limit. And you remember if during the Faraba case, I did write an article regarding referencing this Indemnity Act. And I also asked the Minister of Justice at the UDP Bantaba, on the same questions about this indemnity that protects, the junta and some of the security officers while carrying out their duties. And he said, no, they're not protected. But I think they are misinforming the Gambian people, because the Indemnity Act definitely protects these people while executing their duties. Like Kex was saying, it does not define exactly where the public duties starts and ends. So Yankuba is not stupid. He wouldn't come to the TRRC and just act fully. He is well briefed, he is informed, and he is advised. So I think what the House need to do is for them to sit back and reflect. Because most of the time, when we talk, we pay close attention only to the executive, and then the elected House is left out of scrutiny. So this is why it's like we are failing to hold the executive into account. Because if we hold the elected House into account like we do with the executive, most of these laws would have been repealed, and then the House would be able to hold the executive into account.
Okay.
But here we are failing in that aspect.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your contribution. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if Banka is watching, he can also call us. But Kex, what he said was just like you mentioned, from what time to what time. I know when Jammeh was going to the to Addis Ababa, right? He was going to Ethiopia, and that was in the early morning of the early hours of the morning. That was when they dropped Jammeh off, and then they went to Yankuba's house. That must have been. It was very late in the morning, right? I think if you, I think you guys are like, I'm older than you all. You're very young, so I don't think you will remember that. I don't think you will remember that. But it was after midnight. Yeah, okay. So if it's after midnight, I don't think that would be official duties time.
So this is why I said the Constitution has to interpret to us.
Yes.
Or we have to know where did the duties start and where it ends. And if you know that, we will definitely come with a conclusion to know that whether they have acted in accordance with when they were doing their duties or not. That's why I said let us wait the Supreme Court to interpret, and everybody will know. Because but I see that now everybody has become a constitutional expert.
Yes, right now today everyone is a lawyer. So. But we have another person on the line. Let's see who is calling, please.
Yeah, hello, Fatu.
Yes, is this Banka?
Yes, this is Banka.
I can see you. So now, what is your take? Like everybody today is a constitutional lawyer expert, right?
It's been quite
Yeah, I noticed. But I mean, it's good to have a discussion, especially around the Constitution and the laws of the land, because at the end, I mean, we want a country of laws, not a country of men. So if that in any way helps us to start to really focus on the Constitution and our laws, then that's really a good development.
Yes. So what is your take on this whole issue today at the TRRC, Yankuba Ture versus the TRRC?
No, what Yankuba was saying was all bogus. There was no truth to it. And the Indemnity Act does not cover what Yankuba and Yahya Jammeh and all these perpetrators, the crimes that they've perpetrated. It does not cover those actions. Because at the end, essentially they are saying is that when somebody is carrying out an official duty, they cannot be held responsible or liable for any of their actions. Now, that very constitution, the very constitution of the Gambia also makes it illegal and wrong to really take human life without any justification for it. So you cannot say on one breath, say, oh, I'm protected by the Constitution because the Constitution allows for this, but on another breath, when the Constitution, for the same action, you say, no, you are not allowed to actually do this. You are basically ignoring that. So which one are we going to take? We as a nation are going to gravitate towards the one that simply says, as a country and as human beings and as a civilized nation, we are not going to tolerate this kind of behavior. But so either way you look at it, in the end, this is an action that was illegal, that was wrong, that they should be punished for.
But Banka, is it not the same Indemnity Act that exempted them to be taken to court to be prosecuted for the April 10-11? And it worked at that time, right?
Yes, but then in that same constitution, you still, in our constitution of the Gambia, it makes it illegal. It makes it wrong to take human life in the callous fashion, especially the way they did it. So what, are they claiming that we have contradictions in our laws or what? Because anytime you have confusion in a law like this, then it opens it up to interpretation. And what I am saying here is our interpretation as a nation is going to gravitate towards and is going to validate the matter of safety, the sanctity of life. Make sure that we establish that as a law of the land, because our constitution does not also say in anywhere that it's perfectly okay to go and take human life. It just doesn't say that. It rails against it. So which one are we? So I mean, again, this argument that somehow that the Indemnity Act, whatever law that is, was passed in Parliament, somehow protects these people against prosecution. It's totally flawed and it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So, Banka, let me just come in there.
And quickly, one more point here, though. I was listening to Njai's submission as far as the way this thing was conducted and as if though the TRRC dropped the ball. The TRRC did not drop any balls. They, in fact, acted exactly the way they were supposed to act. Look, Yahya Jammeh's craziness and his idiocy was laid bare, in fact, to the international community at least, after the elections, when the elections were won fair and square by the coalition, and he decided he was not going to step down. You know, that moment opened the eyes of the international community to what the Gambians were dealing with. So now, before the elections, would the international community have been keen to actually send in a multinational force to get rid of Yahya? Most likely not. They were not ever going to do it. But that action by him proved to them that, look, this guy, in fact, we have to take up arms. If that's what we have to do to remove him out of power is what we need to do, because nobody and no country deserves such an idiot. So sometimes you really have to go through this route to prove to the whole world, to show everybody the kind of madness that you are dealing with. And I think the TRRC's action today, Yankuba has proven to all of us, and including, and in fact, he has exposed Yahya Jammeh and the rest of those guys, that these are the kinds of idiots that we are dealing with, and we have to use a heavy hand to deal with them. When we go to court, we need to make sure that we send them to prison and for a long, long, long time, because that's what they deserve.
But Banka, I was going to comment there. You said the TRRC did not drop the ball, but then the TRRC was engaged in a long back and forth with Toure. Since morning, they've been trying to make him testify, and he refused. But the TRRC insisted on him coming publicly to testify. And then he came and all this.
Well, yes, and that's good, because what they needed to do was to put this thing on public display. Because you have to understand, really, two things are happening at the TRRC. You have, it's not a court of law, obviously, but then what it is, it is a court of public opinion. So people always tend to forget that. And these two are equally just as important. One is just as important as the other. The court of public opinion is very critical to this process, because whatever prosecution or whatever punishment or whatever, however we approach this thing later, the public has to have a buy-in into that. The public has to see it for what it is. And I think that really you have to put a lot of these things on public display to really show people what we are dealing with as a nation and the kind of idiots that these people are. If you don't do that, if you just use the court of law to prosecute them, sometimes your punishment may not be in line with what the look at even Sanat Sabali's case. When he came to TRRC, people were saying, well, they son, and then they went through all these things. Now, when you punish a Sana, eventually, you got to really put into consideration all those mitigating factors that were laid bare in front of the whole public. At some point, he has to be punished, and he has to be punished for every crime that he committed. But I'm sure those things, instances will play also along the way into that process. to make sure that the punishment fits the crime in that regard, because he's already paid some price, and then maybe that's going to mitigate some of the punishment that he's supposed to get eventually when we prosecute him.
So let me just quickly ask you this before I hand it over to Fatu.
He's about to go.
So now, you know, you're talking about the public court. That it is very critical, but it also comes with risk, because now this has come out and you've seen an angry mob, you know, going to the Kairaba police station, and